Welcome to This Explainer. Ever wonder why some ideas absolutely take off and change the world, while others just kind of fizzle out before they even begin? Well, today, we're tracing the literal hero's journey of a creative idea. We're going to dive right into the psychology and the data to understand the complete life cycle of human creativity. Here's our roadmap for This Explainer. First, the spark of interest. Then, the 5 levels of creativity, the creativity killers, measuring the abstract, and finally, nurturing the creative mind. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The spark of interest. The catalyst for absolutely every great idea. We have to begin with the engine that drives the whole thing. So what's really fascinating here is that interest isn't just some fleeting, instinctive vibe. As is defined in the research, it actively involves interacting affective and cognitive systems. Basically, it's a tag-team effort between your emotions, that raw feeling of curiosity and concern, and your actual cognitive brain power. When those two systems lock in together, boom, they laser focus your attention on an experience.
And here is a crucial takeaway. While that potential for interest is baked right into us, it's innate, it's actually our environment that molds it. It is a super individualistic force that shapes your personal attention and your goal setting. But, and this is a big one, it is not permanent. It's a fragile spark that you actively have to feed with oxygen. Oh, and psychologists? They've actually found ways to prove that it is entirely measurable.
Moving to Section 2, 5 levels of creativity, the ascent from expression to emergency. Now that we have our spark, let's see how it builds.
An idea doesn't just happen, it climbs. Think of it like a ladder with 5 distinct steps. We start at the expressive level. Keep going and you hit the productive level, where you start acquiring techniques to actually express those ideas. Then comes the discovering level. This is where you find completely new problems that most people would just walk right past. Push further to the innovative level, making massive improvements to what's already out there. And finally, right at the peak is the emergency level.
Let's put that climb into perspective, because the contrast is wild. We almost all kick things off at the expressive level as kids. We're totally spontaneous, totally free. But that emergency level at the top? That is where previous knowledge is completely restructured to birth entirely new theories or schools of thought. As the research points out, very, very few people actually survive the journey to attain that level.
Which brings us to Section 3, the creativity killers. What exactly is standing in our way? Let's look at why so few reach the top.
So, what stops us? Think about it for a second. Have you ever totally bailed on a weird, out-of-the-box idea just because you were terrified of what other people might think? Or maybe you just ran out of time?
Fear of failure, rigid time schedules. These sound like everyday, harmless complaints, right? But they are actually massive walls that block creative development. The data shows us that unfavorable atmospheres, whether that's at home or in school, can completely suffocate that initial spark before it even has a chance to reach the productive level.
Let's unpack these villains. Rigid schedules, forced conformity, over-discipline, they literally hamper a growing mind. Throw in undue criticism or a teacher with a rough attitude towards something new, and a creative personality just stalls out completely. Social backlash against innovation? Huge killer. Even just a lack of extra reading habits holds you back. It's basically a perfect storm designed to crush originality.
So with all these obstacles, how do we know who is actually surviving the climb? Section 4, measuring the abstract, quantifying the creative spark.
You might be wondering, how do you even test for this? Well, we've been doing it for a long time. Way back in 1892, a researcher named Dearborn started studying imaginative responses using Harvard inkblots. Jump forward to the mid-20th century, and we get divergent thinking tests like the Wallach and Kogan instruments. And in later years, psychologists locked in highly rigorous tools like the Torrance and Minnesota tests of creative thinking to really pinpoint and measure those creative minds.
We know the obstacles, and we know how to measure the traits. Section 5, nurturing the creative mind. How do we actively clear the path and protect the idea?
This is where we get proactive. It all starts with foundational support. You have to actively encourage independent thinking. You've got to build basic skills so the brain has the actual tools it needs to discover things. Ask challenging questions, reward curiosity, and honestly, this is absolutely crucial, show some wit and humor. Learning cannot be this rigid, joyless thing if your goal is to foster genius.
In fact, you have to tolerate a certain amount of disorderliness. How wild is that? Sometimes, to really let creative expression thrive, you just have to drop the over-discipline. You have to ditch the perfectionism and embrace a little bit of a mess.
The creative process is rarely neat and tidy.
We also have to follow this incredibly profound rule. See a child as a child. Give them autonomy. Set expectations that actually make sense for their age. If you try to shoehorn a kid into a rigid, adult-like structure, you are actively crushing the spontaneity and freedom that defines that very first expressive level of creativity.
And please, whatever you do, encourage student remarks, even if they sound completely eccentric. Never, ever ridicule someone for a mistake. If you want to nurture a creative mind, you have to create a safe space for the weird, out-of-the-box thoughts. Because honestly, if you shut down the weird ideas, you might just be shutting down the next emergency-level innovation.
So I want to leave you with this to reflect on. Based on everything we've dug into today, how are you going to handle the environments that you control? Will you build walls of rigid conformity, or will you tolerate the disorder needed to spark the next emergency-level idea? Think about how you can eliminate those obstacles and nurture that creative spark for yourself and for the people you guide. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep exploring, and hey, protect those weird ideas.